If you want to really enjoy the High Line, come early in the morning and very few people are out, and it's super quiet, even in New York City, and you have the space all to yourself. I have so many favorite places in New York City, and one of them is the High Line, and I will take you on a tour today and show you all the highlights of the High Line and what it actually is in New York City. So New York City took an old railroad that is above the city itself, a railroad track, and turned it into a public space and used the railroad track to create this public walking area above the city. And it has many gardens, many sitting places, and this used to be in a really old blighted area, and now the area is revitalized and everything is being reconstructed and used in so many ways here on the High Line itself. They've kept a lot of the old railroad tracks, and you can see them in the garden there, and they have planted plants along the old railroad track areas and have this really great green space as you're walking along the High Line itself. So there's a combination of seating areas and all these modern buildings, yet they've kept the old structures of a lot of buildings that are along the railroad. What I love about the High Line is all the different trees and foliages that they planted along this walkway, and then you have all these individual seating areas and these spaces off to the side where you can sit down and enjoy the views. This changes throughout the season, obviously. I was here in the spring and everything was in bloom, and the High Line itself was just spectacular. I love the stark contrast between the old buildings and then all the modern ones that are also along the High Line and in the city. That skyscraper in front of us, I'm not sure if you can see it because of the lighting, that is the Edge, and that has a glass floor that you can walk out on, and it overlooks the city. Every street you cross, you're able to overlook the traffic and what's beneath you and all the shops and restaurants and the public below. That's another great feature that is of the High Line itself. And then they have these beautiful benches that you can sit and watch the traffic go beneath you. The views from the skyline of all the skyscrapers and the buildings are also incredible. Off in the distance, you can see the Chrysler building. And it's the oddly shaped building there in the middle. That's gold. That's the Chrysler building that you can see from here as well. And you have the old building and the old warehouse that meets the new modern apartments in front of us. Here's more of the remnants of the railroad itself, with all the plants growing amongst it. The sizes of these plants obviously have quadrupled in size since it's first opened. We were here in the beginning when the High Line had opened several years ago. Now it looks like it's been here for a long period of time. And then all along the way you'll see these art pieces and structures that are next to you on the walkway. like I said, they have all these great little hidden art pieces amongst all the trees. Here's one of them. Very cool. As we're walking along the walkway here, you can see off in the distance some very modern structures, and coming into view is one of the newest structures that has been built along the riverfront here in New York. The angles and the different viewpoints you get from up here is so different than being down on the street, and you can see for long distances way out into the streets themselves. And that's towards the city center. And then when I spin around here, then there's a view of the water on this side. And here you can see where the old railroad trellises, is that a word, were used to support the railroad tracks at one time. Just opposite of the building in front of me, one of the skyscrapers. I did my morning run this morning on the HIGHLINE, and there literally was maybe 5 people out here, so it was very fun just to run and see all the sights on my own, and I took a lot of photos along the way. And I'm so interested always in the modern technology along with the old buildings, and the designs of everything are just so unique on the HIGHLINE here. So if you want to really enjoy the HIGHLINE, come early in the morning, and very few people are out, and it's super quiet even in New York City, and you have the space all to yourself. So I'm going to take you this way underneath the skyscraper that I had just shown you, because there's another walkway going in this direction that part of the railroad track is used. And then there's some artwork on display on the sides here, which are very cool as well. Here's another great piece of art sitting along the seat here on one of the sitting areas. And a lot of great benches and sitting locations here at the Coach Purse store. And another piece of very fun and interesting art. You can still see the tracks in here. And then this is a dead end in this direction that I ran this morning. However, it's a huge open space for sitting and hanging out, and it goes above the streets. And you can look over the traffic here. Down into the street of New York. And then you have this angle on the other street. Beautiful old structure there, adding some character to the neighborhood. And then you have this big sculpture in the middle, which is an airplane. And here's the other viewpoint of the street from the other side. There's the Edge building up there, and you can see the glass bottom that you can stand over. You do have to pay to go up there though. I looked up the tickets and it was $38 to go to the top. It's kind of crazy price if you ask me. There's a good visual here on how they kept the old structure of the rails here and then put in the walkway and the cement and kept the railroad tracks in combination with all the plants and then the seating area. This section here really combines the old train tracks and the railroad tracks in combination with the seating and all the plants. This is one of my favorite sections here on the High Line. They've kept sections here that you can walk between to show you the railroad ties. And then as you enter this area, this then overlooks the water. They do have the section way at the end closed off. Typically you can walk out further onto the water's edge. And this overlooks actually the railroad down there and all the trains at the bottom, in combination obviously with the city street itself. The actual railroad itself was built, and it was called the High Line, was built by the New York Central Railroad between 1929 and 1934 to eliminate street-level train crossings from 34th Street to Spring Street in an effort to improve both efficiency and public safety. Joshua David and Robert Hammond met with a community board meeting. The two young New Yorkers formed a nonprofit group called Friends of the High Line to advocate to save the High Line and preserve it and transform it into public space. And here's the newest structure on the High Line, the end of the High Line. This is called the Vessel. It's not open right now, but you can walk on each of those ramp-like structures and get different views throughout the city from up there. Much different viewpoint from below the structure. This whole section here at the end of the High Line is called the Hudson Yards, and the building is the Edge, which is right next to us, and these are all the shops. It's a shopping area, shopping mall. This morning when I was down here on my run, it was literally me and 5 people, and then there was a spin class going on there at underneath the tent, so that was kind of fun. Broadcasting the Olympics on the big screen here in front of the vessel, and then there's people sitting around and watching the Olympics. Kind of fun. This is part of the structure of the High Line from below. Gives you a little bit of perspective on the architecture of the actual railroad structure from the ground and how they've preserved it and combined it in amongst all the modern buildings. So that was a really tiny section of the High Line, but a lot of the highlights, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about New York City, leave them in the comments below. We have been here several times, and at one time we actually lived here for, I shouldn't say lived here, we stayed here for 2 months, and so I do know quite a bit about New York City. However, obviously not a resident, but maybe I can help you out if you're looking to come to New York City and the sights to see. Next time I'm here, I will give you a tour of another great section of New York. And now I am off to Times Square.